Welcome, everyone. Happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us here in our session today. Uh, as is, I am honored to be here with you in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty, and I look forward to sharing time with you in our shared sacred space together today. So the things we'll do in our time to come together today, sacred space, will be the usual. So start by setting sacred space, and there's a specific way we do that, and we'll do that in about 30 seconds. Then we'll have our talk, our sort of topic talk for the month for the session. And the topic for this month is how to avoid self-sabotage. And we'll get into sort of how that topic came up this month as well. After that, there's an echo. Is there an echo? Okay. Let me change my mic. Okay, how's that? Is that better? Is that better? Okay, great. Okay, great. I'm in my AirPod now. Thank you, everyone. Okay, yeah. Let me know if there are any other issues. So after our topic, we'll have a bit of an exercise, and then we'll close sacred space for the session. Okay. All right. So let me just check and make sure all the streams are working. Okay. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and start the process of setting our sacred space together. And in beginning the process of setting sacred space, I would just basically like to say our intention in doing this is to create a space together which is sacred. In other words, which is devoid of fear, threat, and control. In order for us to be able to open to higher guidance from within our own selves, however we define that. It could be a muse that we follow, it could be intuition, gut feel, a hunch that we have, what have you. And so in this space, we would like it to be a safe sanctuary space for all of us to be able to relax and surrender with no feeling of danger or threat, so that we can partake of the nourishment, the emotional nourishment and the spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together as a group. In an opening sacred space today, I will propose, as I always do, that we all follow the 4 principles of Presidian sacred space. Number 1 is confidentiality. Standard Vegas rules, right? What happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. Now that's the rule when we're in person, when we're also traveling all over, meeting everyone in small groups. Because this is online, the stream is public, the replay will be public. The way we handle confidentiality is via anonymization. So if you would like to be anonymous, you don't have to be anonymous, but if you would like to be anonymous, you would come into the Crowdcast stream, go into the edit profile feature, and then just change your username to Harry Potter, Mickey Mouse, what have you, and then come back and continue chatting, asking questions, and interacting. Only if you want. You don't have to interact at all either, and we'll get to that as well. Number 2 is that we refrain as much as possible from giving any kind of feeling of threat, of controlling, and regardless of intention. So not just hostile threat and controlling, but also well-meaning controlling. So we don't do any fixing either. We don't do tough love. We don't say, well, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you, but you really need to hear this because it's good for you. We don't do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that per se, but because we are trying to create a space that is devoid of fear, threat, and control. And when I say you better do this for your own good, that is a form of threat. Well-meaning threat, but still the physics of it are threat. Do this or else, right? So we simply want to create a space that is devoid of fear, threat, and control so we can get the things done that you can only do in a sacred space, that you can only do in a space which is devoid of fear, threat, and control. So even well-intentioned tough love, we don't do that. Uh, our goal here is to hold space for each other, to be however we are, good or bad, right? Scary or delightful, okay? And to hold space for that, and to assure each other that however you present, however you feel, however you are in this space today, here, now, all together, that no one will interfere with you, right? Even with good intention, okay? So if you are afraid and anxious today, uh, we hold space for you. We accept you as you are. If you're happy and relaxed today, we hold space for you as you are. However you feel about how you feel. So if you're afraid and anxious and you're like, well, I'm righteously afraid and anxious, who wouldn't be in this day and age? We hold space for you as you are. If you're happy and relaxed and you feel guilty about the fact that you're happy and relaxed, we don't say, oh, don't worry, you should just enjoy your happiness. We just, however you are, we hold space for you as you are. Okay. So that's the second principle. Third principle is a corollary to the first two, which is no commerce, right? So nothing may be sold. I can't sell you anything. Gary can't sell you anything. Please refrain from marketing things to each other in the chat. And again, the reason for that is when I'm marketing something, right, there is always a veiled threat. So if I sell you skin cream and I say, if you'd like to have skin like mine, buy my skin cream, there's a threat. If you don't buy my skin cream, you won't get the result, right? And because we're creating, and there's nothing wrong with commerce, right? But because we're creating a space, again, that is ideally devoid of fear, threat, and control, we don't sell anything. And we also do not make any recommendations or suggestions. So let's say we're talking about a problem and someone in the chat or myself knows of a great book that you can read that explains all of this. And I'm not being paid to pitch the book, you're not being paid, and you recommend that. If you can, we refrain from doing recommendations as well. Nothing wrong with it, but we want to refrain from giving any kind of feeling of fear, threat, and control. Said another way, we are here for your energy, not for the things you bring. We are here for what you are, not for your value add, not for what you do or provide. Okay. And the fourth and final principle is that there is no expectation of participation. So there's no pressure to do anything. There's no pressure to, whip you, to convince you, twist your arm to come to sacred space, right? There's no pressure to stay in sacred space. There's no pressure to chat, to not chat, ask questions or not ask questions. You can come and go as you please, right? Again, the nourishment comes from the held space and your presence and attention, from what you are, not from what you do or provide. And you can obviously do sacred space on your own, and in the shower, going for a long run or workout or meditating. But when we do sacred space in a group, it's like a potluck dinner. Right? It's like all of us together tend to co-amplify the energy, the nourishment of the sacred space, and then we all get to enjoy. And that's why I love doing sacred space as well, because I get to enjoy the sacred space that we're all creating together as well. So anyway, this is what I proposed. And if you are not okay with being in the sacred space and creating the sacred space, that's totally okay. There's no fear, threat, or control for you to do any of this. But this is the threshold that we are about to cross together. And if you are not okay with it, we just want to pause and give you a moment to withdraw from the group as you see fit. And that's fine. We'll still be friends. We'll still hang out later in profane space. You'll still get emails from me if you're on my email list. But for now, we're moving into sacred space. So I just want to take a pause and give everyone a moment to make their selection, their sovereign choice as to whether they would like to continue. Okay. Okay. All right. So for the rest of us, we will now cross the threshold into our sacred space together. And as we move now together into our shared sacred space, I will just remind everyone, myself included, of the 4 principles we are trying our best to uphold in the space: confidentiality, anonymization, no fear, threat, or control, no fixing, no tough love, no commerce, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. All right. Welcome to our sacred space. Again, everyone, this is a highlight of the month for me and every month. And thank you so much for coming every session and sharing in this feast of nourishment together with me and with us. So now we'll get into our talk for the month. And the topic for this month is how to avoid self-sabotage. So in this session's weekly, our mythic brainstorm that Gary, my editor, and I do in preparation for these sessions, we came across a Japanese folktale that when Gary read it, I was like, this is basically the mirror image of the African folktale we read for last month's session. And so last month's session was entitled The Mechanics of Self-Sabotage. And with this Japanese sort of version of the physics and dynamics, it was more, the related topic then is not just the mechanics of how it happens, but this story tells us a bit more about how to avoid the entire spaghetti tangle of self-sabotage in the first place, right? Which then, when we look at the physics it presents to us, kind of shows us this very nuanced, subtle blueprint of how to, for instance, engage your, what we call the wounded inner child in some systems, what we call the lost board member in the programs we teach. So to recover this wounded part of you, to find the source of our bliss and inner superpower, and to let this flow of bliss guide us forward in our lives. It's a beautiful story. And so, Gary, if you're on screen, are you on screen? Oh yeah, there you are. Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Please join us.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
We're good.
All right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So would you tell us about the story you selected for this month?
Yeah, so this is just a very simple folktale that I came across, and it didn't particularly, kind of give me any sense of what we've done before or anything like that, like you did. I mean, you mentioned right away, like, this is a follow-up of previous session, but when I read it, the only thing that I felt was that it seemed quite dreamy to me. Like it felt like I was actually seeing a dream rather than reading a story. So that felt good, and I thought we'll do something simple for a change. But I was completely taken aback and this happens every time, right? When I read stories, I have absolutely no idea how you're going to read them or what you're going to say.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, like I think about these symbols and I say, okay, I think Artie's given me like a little dictionary of these symbols. So I know the inner feminine when I see one. I know the inner masculine, and I know like the symbol of spirit and symbol of like the embodied, aspects of ourselves and things like that. So I look at all those, but I just don't know the whole picture. And I'm thinking, okay, how is Artie going to read this? And then when we discuss it, it comes as a complete surprise every time you come up with narrative. So even with this one, I had no idea you were going to say that. But when I read it, you said, this is just a reflection of the other story. It was like, what? So
and I was stunned because it's like, you can't make this up. You're just picking the stories, like practically with a blindfold, letting your muse guide you.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at this is, clearly she's like, I don't need to predict what your muse is doing, but it seems like she's like leading us down a path. And it's a nice ride.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't make this up even if I overanalyze the whole thing. I mean, there's no way to make this up.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Right? Do you want me to read the story?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So the story is called The Grateful Monkey. And it goes, long, long ago, there lived an old man who earned his livelihood by selling sake, right? So the Japanese liquor, wine. And every day he would carry a heavy barrel full of sake on his back, and he would walk selling sake from village to village. And he'd call out to get people's attention, delicious wine, please try it once. If you drink one mouthful, your fatigue will disappear. If you drink a second mouthful, your worries will disappear. Please try it. Please drink it. So he'd call out to all the people, probably in the village markets, in the village squares. And by the end of the day, he would return home, having sold as much wine as he could. But he was very poor, and he had to walk from morning to night trying to sell his wine. But by nature, he was just a very good and merry person. He was very carefree. And when he met small children on the roadside, he would set aside his barrel and he would play with them. He would say, come, little ones, let's play, let's be friends. And sometimes he'd play hide and seek, and sometimes, the children would bring their, say, bouncing balls and toys, and he would play with them. And this would just be every day for him, right? So one day, this old man got up early in the morning, and he carried the barrel of wine on his back. He walked down to a village near the seashore. The weather was beautiful. There were seagulls flying all over, and then down from the mountains. And this old man, as usual, called out to everyone, delicious wine, try it once, and all of those things. And he went from house to house, went almost towards the mountains near the beach. He scoured all the streets. He couldn't sell any wine that day. And he came to the beach and he said, oh, I'm so tired, and this barrel is so heavy. I mean, he hadn't managed to sell anything. It was still full. So he lay down to rest under a tree just near the beach, and he heard someone squealing, like crying in pain. It was coming from the beach, right? So he looked up and he wondered, who's crying? What happened? And he got up, ran to the beach to find the source of that crying, and he found a monkey trying to free his hand. Like there was a crack in between the rocks, and there was a big crab which had caught the monkey in its sharp claws, and the hand was bleeding. And when the old man saw this, he took a stone, he started hitting the crab, and then he found a stick and he started hitting the crab with the stick. And the crab just wouldn't let go. And then when he found the stick, he kind of wedged it into the sharp claws of the crab. He opened the claws with force, and then he made the crab leave the monkey's paw, and the monkey's paw was free. But then the crab had already cut it quite deep, so the paw was bleeding badly, and the poor monkey was still crying from pain. And the old man said, oh, you poor thing, let me help you. And he took the monkey's hand in his arms. He carried it back to where he was. He washed the wound with seawater. And then he took a scarf from his own neck. He tore it, made a nice bandage for the monkey. And he nicely sort of wound it around his paw. And the monkey was very quiet as he did all this, just patiently waited for him to dress up the wound. And then once he was done, it cried out as if to say thank you, and then ran out towards the mountains. And this old man thought, I always thought monkeys lived in trees. And this is the first ever time I've seen a monkey caught by a crab. It's just so strange. But, I'm glad I was around and I could rescue that poor monkey. And then he picked up his barrel and went off again to the village and started crying out about the wine. Now, 3 days later, the old man came back to the same village near the beach. And this is when he saw a monkey coming towards him. And it was the same monkey that the man had rescued. And, he could just tell from how he saw at the monkey, but then the monkey also had the bandage around its paw. So he could tell it was exactly the same monkey And he said, "Hello, Mr. Monkey, are you better now? And has the wound healed? Let's look at it." And he patted the monkey on his head and took his paw, looked at the paw. And then he was surprised by what the monkey did. The monkey was pulling at the edge of his kimono. And he said, "Oh, what are you doing? Leave it." But then the monkey kept tugging at it and kept running ahead. So he then realized, oh, are you telling me to follow you? Are you taking me somewhere? What do you want? And so he continued to walk with the monkey. And the monkey just kept holding on to his kimono and kept, going ahead. So he realized that the monkey wanted to probably take him somewhere or show him something. So he just followed it. And now the monkey crossed the forest, started to climb the mountains. And there was no pathway where it went. There were just thick bushes and shrubs. There were trees that reached high, so high that you couldn't see the canopy on top. So, this was dense forest where no one had gone before. And there were no birds here. You couldn't hear anything. It was so still. And the monkey kept plodding along, and the old man followed it. He kept wondering, where are you taking me? There could be, these goblins and spirits in these mountains, and I don't see anyone else. So where are you taking me? And finally, he saw there was a spring of fresh water bubbling up and flowing. And he saw this, and that's where the monkey stopped. He says, now I see. You're taking me like a monkey would. You're taking me to water. And you think this is like fresh water that I would like. Well, it's good of you. It's a nice place. It's a lovely place, but there's many places I can get fresh water, but thank you. And then he realizes, at this point, there was a sweet, familiar scent that came up from this fountain. He said, "Wait a minute, what is this smell?" No, that's just impossible. I mean, this is water, right? And he went and drank it, and he realized it's wine. It's not water. The spring, the fountain, was giving out wine. And so he scooped up a handful and he drank it, and he said, "This is wonderful. This is much better than the wine I've been selling. And thank you, Mr. Monkey." And he took, the monkey's hands and he sort of embraced the monkey. And he asked the monkey, "Is it all right if I come here every day and fill my barrel?" And the monkey nodded. And so from that day, the old man would go daily to the spring of wine, and he'd carry his empty barrel. He'd fill it up with this sparkling, beautiful wine. And then he would go, he did the same thing as he did every time, go village to village, and he would sell it. And this time he would sell it at half the usual price because, he was getting the wine all free from this beautiful spring. And then one day something strange happened. So there was a festival in the village, and he was able to sell all the wine very quickly, because there were festivities going on. And he thought, all right, it's not even midday and my barrel's empty. So I'll go back to the spring. I'll fill up my barrel again. And so he climbed up the mountains, went to the forest. But when he reached the spot where that beautiful spring was, he was amazed to see that it had completely dried up. There was nothing. He thought, what's happened? What's happened to the spring? Is it gone? And then he thought, I now understand. So I shouldn't be too greedy. I can fill up one barrel a day, but I must take care not to be too greedy. And so he went back home, right? He'd emptied this barrel anyway. And what a wonderful spring, he thought. And from that day on, he would just go once a day, fill up that one barrel with this delicious wine, and then he'd go selling it from village to village and calling out to people. And since the wine cost him nothing, and even though he sold it at half the market price, he soon became a very rich man. So that's the story of the grateful monkey and the wonderful spring. Artie, are you there? Would you like to come?
Yes.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I liked it even better the second time.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start with my usual question, which is, where do you enter into that story?
Yeah. Like I said before, right? When I read the story, at first it just seemed like a very delightful, simple folktale. And the usual, you do good to animals and the animals help you back, that motif kind of a thing. So it was a familiar motif, but very simple. But the thing that really came to me when I was reading the story was that it felt like a dream, in that it had the quality of a dream. I don't know how to explain this, but you know how you have these really elaborate dreams sometimes with a complete storyline and characters, and they talk and really very clear lines that they say, which kind of, once you come out of the dream in your waking state, you think, what was that about? But in the dream, it all makes perfect sense, and
That's right.
it's logical, it has a good flow, and it's like a complete story in itself. When you have a vivid dream like that, it's like you're in a sort of a magical world. And when you wake up, and this is what I do, I love that whole feeling so much. I love that it's a complete story, that I go back to the dream and kind of try to relive that dream and try to reimagine that dream all over again. And I go over the details and try to get the spirit, the quality of that dream, and to feel it. It's not always there, when you reimagine the dream, it's not the same thing. But there's something so magical about it. So that's how I felt when I read this story. It's really like seeing a dream. So I'll talk about that more later when I have to tell you about a dream. But that's the feeling I got, and I loved it. And I thought, okay, well, let's just do this. This is lovely.
Okay, good. Should I dive into my notes, because I want to get to your dream elaboration as well?
Tell me how you kind of, the first thing you said to me once the story ended was like, this is just a mirror reflection of the previous story. It was like, what?
Yeah, it was stunning.
How did you come to that?
The first thing that hit me, was that this is an exact mirror image of the Kuda, the African story that you told last month. And if you remember, and Gary has put the link there, so you can go and watch the replay if you want. Everything that the Kuda story showed us, right? She was exiled, she was abused by the women who grew the crops in the village. She led the children, they deprioritized the children, they deprioritized Kuda. She led the children Pied Piper style into the well, the pond, and the children jumped in, and then later she jumped in as well, but they're still, the story didn't say they died, right? You can still hear Kuda's drum even to this day when you're near a body of water in the forest. And we took that as a kind of symbolic pattern of saying, this is what you don't do, right? You don't do this to your exile. You want to recover your exile, et cetera, et cetera. And so when Gary read this story, it was like this incredible mirror image of the Kuda story. Because whereas the Kuda story was a story of what not to do, here you have the exact reverse, which is the story of what to do, right? So it's like if you have a cut on your arm, right, a little wound on your arm, there's a whole list of do's and don'ts, right? So you don't rub salt in it, you don't cut it even more deeply, you don't leave it exposed, you don't cover it without changing the dressing, it'll get infected. So all these don'ts, but then there are all these do's as well. You do want to cleanse it gently. You do want to put bandages on it. You do want to change the bandages regularly. You do want to rest it and give it air as well. And the purpose of having a list of don't do's and yes, go ahead and do these, is that between the two of them, you can triangulate into a very precise understanding of not just the do's and don'ts, but when you look at each list, you get a deeper understanding and insight as to the physics of this thing, right? What are the mechanics of this thing? And when you understand something at that level, right? When I understand, like the mechanics of how Hemingway writes in his style of very sort of, lean prose, right? When I really understand it, I can start to write in a Hemingway-esque style, and kind of imitate him, echo his style if I want, but I have to understand the style and the physics of the style. So anyway, here, this old guy is out selling his sake, right? And sake, in the context of this story, I take as a kind of quality of spirit, literally, right? And here the spirit is, the sake is described as good for your health. 1 cup cures this, 2 cups cures this. And alcohol in general, like mythopoetically speaking, typically points in the direction of the spirit. Okay. Sort of hard liquors, not just wine, but like whiskey, vodka, are literally referred to as spirits. And this is not an accident. I think actually the English word alcohol is actually derived from the Arabic al-kul. And al-kul is the name of a mischievous spirit in Arabic. So, alcohol is the spirit that can be used, but if you overuse it, it can trap you, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to the spirit factor, sake is also a liquid, right? In fact, in the forest, it's mistaken for water. And water, as we know from all these sessions we've done in the past, is a symbol of insight, right? So here you just kind of put all the sort of parts of the telegram together. We're talking about this sake factor, which is a symbol within your own self, right? The way we read these dreams and myths and fairy tales is that we regard every major actor in the story as being symbolic of a different part of your own inner self, right? Then we press the play button, we let the action unfold, and then we see what's going on, who's doing what to whom, what are the physics of what's going on. And so here, this sake in the story, we take as being a kind of insight-giving spirit within us, Okay, so this is not like physical sort of approving of drinking or not approving of drinking. This is a symbolic thing within us. So that's one way of understanding the role of this rice wine. Because this is important because in the story then, right, if you look at the overall meta arc of the story, there is this element, this factor that is good, it's very beneficial, insight-giving spirit, right? And then over the course of the story, he does everything right, like everything he should be doing in terms of the physics we know from past stories, dealing in good faith with other parts of himself, sort of helping other parts of himself through just sort of spontaneous action. He does everything right. And then what happens at the end of the story is that the quality, right, of the insight he receives on a daily, ongoing basis greatly improves. So the sake is amazing sake, even as the cost reduces to basically zero. Okay. And there's all kinds of associations, all kinds of directions we can go here. When you have allowed yourself to grieve a huge loss in your life, instead of like trying to numb it, run away, and distract yourself, when you finally allow grief, not just to overtake you, but you go running in the direction of grief, and you willingly go down into the well, it changes you. It changes you, right? Older men and women who have gone through cycles of grief, there's a kind of gravitas or kind of seasoning of them. And you can feel this just, being in their presence, right? And so one of the things that then happens is that when you have gone through a full cycle of grief in your life, it's not that nothing bad will ever happen to you again, and it's not that you will never have to grieve again. But the next time it happens, you know how to do it. It's still painful. You still go through a period of resisting. But when you finally go down, you're like, actually, I know what this is. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I would never want to go through it again. And yet, here we are. And now that we are here, I do know how to do this because I've done it before. And you go through. So the quality of your insight as you go through and do everything right, and we'll talk about what that means, the quality of your insight improves. Because the second, third, fourth times you go through grief as a person, you start to see things on the way down and on the way up that you didn't notice before. Because the first time through, you were just like, eyes rolling around, just trying to get through it as quickly as possible. This time it's like, I know this place, right? This place is my place. This is a part of myself. This is part of my house. I don't visit here very often, right? But I'm getting familiar with this place to the point where not just like, I roll, why do I have to come back again? I'm such a victim, what was me? It's like, no. This cellar of grief within my own inner self is also a part of me, right? And I do not deny it. And in fact, I claim this grieving part of me, which is as valid as the love and light part of me. Okay. So in terms of like what he does right, the beauty is because we have the Kuda story for reference, we can then look at what he does right in the context of the Kuda story. So here he is going from village to village, selling his sake every day. This is his like sort of give us this day our daily bread, sort of daily work. This is the equivalent of the women in the Kuda story going to work in the fields and growing the crops. Okay. And the signal characteristic of this old sake seller is that unlike the women of the village in the Kuda story, even though he is poor, even though he works hard all day long too, when he meets the children, he puts everything aside and he prioritizes the children even before his own dinner, right? Whereas the women of the Kuda story left the children to be watched by Kuda, not because they trusted Kuda, but because they're like, watching the children is like the last priority. I'm out getting money and prestige, getting my crops going, all of the rest of it. And the children are just like a nuisance. Okay. And in this story, not only, they aren't even his own children. They're just these random children in the village, and he prioritizes them above even his own nourishment, right? Even his own taking in of the crops, if you will. Okay. And so, as we've said many times in the series, when you see children and babies in dream, they are a symbol of the emerging, like version 2.0, next chapter of that part of you. And just children in general are, this next version and chapter of yourself, of your life. And one of the things that happened in the Kuda story was that they deprioritized that, and they lost the children as a result. They lost this sort of next phase. They're stuck in stalemate, doing these crops forever, and there is no next generation to sort of advance and do sort of the next part of the intergenerational epic saga, right? Here, the old man takes care of the children, plays with them, even though he hasn't made enough money for his own dinner, he does it anyway, and puts them as first priority. And concurrent with that, all these good things happen, right? Now, again, I don't want to make this a causal didactic thing. So it's like, you must be good to your inner child and you will get good things in return. It's not a transaction. He doesn't know the good things are going to happen. It's like the Frog King story we always tell. When the princess kisses the frog, she doesn't know he's Prince Charming, right? She kisses the frog for its own sake. He prioritizes the children, not because he's going to get something, but because he prioritizes the children for their own sake. Okay. So when we say more in sort of the modern psychological system, where you talk about inner child, right? When people say, oh, I need to get in touch with my inner child, they talk about healing mechanisms. They talk about how to heal something in the past, childhood trauma, something that was done to me. But also that inner child isn't just your historical past self. It is also an archetype within you. And these archetypes are always there within you. You have a child in you now that is not the historical biological you when you were 7 years old, right? But it is the child archetype within you now, which means an archetype is self-luminous and self-sufficient. It is a categorical sort of element within you. So when you regard the child archetype within you, you're not saying, oh, and I'm looking forward to your progression to the next thing and the next thing in adulthood and whatever. It's like, no. Those are different archetypes. The child archetype has its own physics. Right? So the point of the archetype is that it is its own thing. It is eternal in and of itself. And so reaching out and getting in touch with your inner child does mean healing of past traumas and supporting. Okay. But one of the functions of the inner child is also to be the symbol of your emerging future self. So that you want to heal, but you also want to consult inner child for what your future path is as well. Right? Said another way, inner child in our very curing centric, medical centric psychology system, it tends to be focused on the past, but the child archetype within you is not just about your past. I mean, it's kind of interesting, but if like 90% of your time is spent on like what happened to you as a kid, that same inner child archetype has the keys to your future as well. Right? And for me, it's like, I mean, you could be 90 in the past, 10% in the future, 50-50, 10 in the past, 90 in the future. There's no sort of set formula, but if you think that 90% focused on the past, 10% on the future is the only way, it's not. Right? You can choose, just like sacred and profane, what the split is, you can choose that. You can choose that. Right? So my son is now 15. When I butler my son, when I cook for him, when I drive him around, I'm not just doing it for him, right? But mythopoetically, I am de facto nurturing my own future self as well, right? When I, as his father, honor him and take care of him, right? I am, in a sense, taking care of my own inner child as well. And not so that I get any future reward, right? I don't take care of my son so that he'll like take care of me when I'm older. I take care of my son because I'm taking care of my son, right? It's unconditional, it's for his own sake. So anyway, so this old man is working hard, but he puts the children first, not last. And then on a particularly tough day when he sold nothing, right? He's not going to eat that night because he sold nothing. And in these fairy stories, it's always when you stumble that you stumble into the treasure, right? Which is a symbol of life as well. When you stumble in life, that is when typically you're stumbling over the trap door that is actually the doorway into your deeper treasure. So on a particularly tough day, he sold nothing, he's a big failure. He runs into the monkey, which we take here as the exiled part of this diorama of the inner self. The monkey here is Kuda. Okay, the monkey is wounded, and the monkey, unbeknownst to the man, has access to regions of the unexplored forest, just like Kuda had access to regions of the unexplored forest. Just like in The Frog King, the frog is the only actor in the story that is able to go down into the well and retrieve the golden ball for the princess. Even the king is unable to do that. So you can argue that the frog, the exile within you, is more powerful, is the most powerful player on the chessboard of your inner self. Right? Unlike the women of the village in the Kuda story, who abused Kuda and deprioritized her, exiled her, the old man is instantly nice to the monkey. Right? Literally takes care of it, heals the monkey's wound, doesn't ask for anything in return. It's just this spontaneous, he doesn't even think. It's just like intuitively obvious to him that you would take care of the kids, put them first, and you would take care of the monkey, no questions asked. literally heals the wound of the exile. So beautiful. And then sends him on his way, right? He cares for the monkey as unthinkingly as he prioritizes the children. And so when you see something like this in a story, it's like, well, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And you look at the overall meta arc of the old man. At the end of the story, he's on a way better footing than he is at the beginning of the story. So all the things he does in between, you could regard as highly recommended. Right? So everything the old man does, it's like, that's the way you want to do it, right? That's the way to be. That's the way to be. And because this is a story about what to do, right? How to do it right. It's a very short and direct story. There's not a lot of drama. It's like when you do it right, it's just a straight shot. Okay. But that often ends up being the hardest thing to do, right? Like in our everyday lives, it's like, what do we want? We would all like to live a long time. We would like to preserve the planet. And to do that, all you really need to do is eat healthy, exercise, and don't burn fossil fuels. But nobody actually does those things, right? But the prescription of what to do is very short and sweet, and nobody does that, and we end up getting into this spaghetti tangle of mess of the things we actually do. But again, it's good to have stories that tell us what not to do and what to do, and then between those, we can figure out the deeper physics of the mythopoetics of our life, so that we can try to navigate in a way that serves us better as we so choose, right? As we so choose. So next, we can talk a little bit about the monkey itself. So those of you who have done meditation and meditation programs with me, this monkey is the monkey mind, right? This monkey is the monkey mind, the chattering, nervous part of your mind that's always jumping from mango to mango, can never sit still, always going after the shiny thing. Now, there's all kinds of things we can say about the monkey figure. Why it's caught, why it's wounded, why it's his hand that's wounded as opposed to his leg. Did it stick his hand in the cookie jar one too many times, mischievous, and this crab basically is like, the sheriff kind of putting a stop to all this mischief. So we won't go into all that. Basically, at a high level, this monkey is the exiled part of you. Okay. If you saw a street person on the street, you could just walk on pretending you didn't see, right? And you can do this in the outer world, and you can do this in your own inner world as well, right? How do you feel? Fine, right? Even internally, you ask yourself, do you even ask yourself, how do you feel? But even when you ask yourself, you're like, fine, I'm fine, nothing. I don't want to talk about it. And in so doing, you walk right past your monkey, you walk right past your inner Kuda. Okay. And in the modern world, we're taught to tell ourselves we're fine, even though we're not, to sort of keep the exiled, keep the exiled part of you exiled. So here, this seemingly dopey, poor, not prestigious, not rich sake seller reflexively drops everything for the children, next part of you, and the wounded monkey, the exile. The exact mirror opposite of what happens in the Kuda story. And the result is that the monkey leads him into the dark, unexplored forest where no one has ever been before. He's like, this is dangerous. Or I could get killed. I could get shot with an arrow, right? Or cursed by a goblin. But he intuitively trusts the monkey, right? Come what may, you trust this exiled part of yourself. Okay. And this exiled part of yourself, when you have communion with it, doesn't just give you a prize on the shore of the beach. It leads you deeper into your own inner self, right? The symbolism, the mythopoetics of the dark forest across multiple traditions, in the Grimm's fairy tales, in the Arthurian Celtic legends, in Indian folk tales, the dark forest always means a similar thing, which is the part of your inner self that is unexplored and unknown, which, by the way, is where the exile lives. Okay. In the Hindu system in particular, there's a grand archetypal dichotomy between the village world and the forest world. right? And there's a phase of your life where you are in the village of the world, and then there's a phase in your life, in the second half of life, where you move to the forest part of the world. And here, mythopoetically, your guide through the forest world is the exile. It is Kuda is very comfortable in the jungle, right? And the monkey is very comfortable in the jungle, in the forest as well. And so, true to form, the old man acts with spontaneous compassion and in good faith with the monkey. What does good faith mean? It means, we commit to whatever we have committed to in our deal, right? And here, it's even better than good faith. It's like, you're wounded, I'm just going to help you. And I'm not going to ask for anything in return. When he sees the monkey later, 3 days later, he doesn't say, well, what are you going to do for me now? He's like, well, how's your paw? All right, that's great. And the monkey's like, all right, buddy, come on. It's time for my part. I act in good faith as well. And he's like, where are you taking? Oh, you want to? Okay, I'll follow you. It's kind of dark in here, but in good faith, he follows through, right? He follows through. The monkey leads him deeper into the forest, into the unexplored territory of your own inner self. And then you reach this spring and pond. Exactly like in the Kuda story. In the Kuda story, the pond was a pond of, if you were in that session, you'll remember that we said the pond was a pond of grief and tears. You lost the children in that pond. You lost Kuda in that pond because you did not deal with them with the appropriate level of priority. You did not cherish them, and you did not act in good faith with them. Okay, that's what you don't want to do. But even there, it's not a disaster. You go into grief. Well, it's like that's just the phase of the journey you're in. And when you realize it's time to go into grief, the most efficient thing you could do, not that you need to be efficient, but the most efficient thing you can do is just to like willingly jump in the pool and lock and load and go. Because it's like either way, it's going to hurt, right? So it's like just ripping off the Band-Aid faster and just getting on with it. When you see the mythopoetic larger pattern, you're like, all signs are pointing to, the next 6 months, I'm going to be in grief. I'm going to be not functional. And I can delay it. I mean, I'm the sovereign of my life. I can do whatever I want. You can't really violate the laws of physics. But I can delay it. I can distract myself, which will turn the 6 months into, a year or two, right? Or if I have the key, right, the answer key of like these patterns of life that happen again and again, not just in the modern era, but all throughout human history, right? Some of these fairy tales are unspeakably old, and they are these imagistic operating manuals of the human experience itself. So if I know grief is coming, it's not bad. It's painful as hell, but it's not bad, right? And it is necessary and unavoidable. It's like, well, what else am I going to do? Right? If I want to get it over with, let's just do it. And you're in and out in 6 months, right? And you are transformed. Okay. Easier said than done. Okay, just to be easier said than done, but those are the physics. Those are the physics. So that's in the Kuda story. Here, it is the opposite. It is the mirror opposite. Here, the monkey, whom you have cherished, whom you didn't know anything, he wasn't even watching the kids, and they aren't even your kids, right? Leads you into the same dark forest and leads you to a pond that is deep hidden in the dark forest. Okay. And instead of the pond being a pond of grief and tears, right, it is the pond which is a fountain of the sake, the insight giving spirit of the fairy world, the deepest part of your own inner self, which represents an immeasurable, unspeakable, priceless upgrade in his sake, in his insight-giving spirit, right? Because the old man is you, the monkey is you, the deep dark wood is you, and the fountain of sake is you. And when you act in good faith with these other parts of you, they then lead you deeper into your own self, into the superpower fountain sake of your own self, right? It's been within you the whole time, but you can only find it by being led to it within you. And the forces within you that lead you to it are the very same forces that the profane modern world says that's not a thing, right? If you're not fine, saying you're not fine is not a thing. You have to say you're fine. You have to smile, be positive, be love and light. Everything must be positive. So you stuff that exile down, right? And this is saying, I mean, do whatever you want, but if you embrace the exile, they will lead you deeper in. Okay. Now there is this fountain of superpower, life-giving insight, insight-giving spirit within you. And now you get to drink it, but then it also provides the nourishment of livelihood, right? Because you trusted the Kuda monkey, it led you to the magical fountain deep within your own self. And this magical fountain makes you not have to work in the fields anymore, a la the Kuda story. Right? In the Kuda story, we had theorized that if only the women had been nice to Kuda, right? She's got the magic drums. She could have beaten the drums to get the lions and the tigers and all the animals of the forest to come in, obey her, do her bidding. And in theory, right, you would never do this because it's disrespectful. But she has so much power. In theory, she could even come in and make the lions and the tigers grow the crops while the women all like relax in the village. Okay. But regardless, there would have been something she could have done to let the women not have to work so hard, right? If only they had understood, and if only they had allowed their natural compassion to flow for her. Okay? When you cut Kuda off, you lose all these other things. It's not a punishment. It's just the physics of the thing. For instance, if you, excuse the gory image, right? But if you cut your leg off, right, then you can't walk. That's not a punishment, right? If you cut your leg off, the police don't come and say, oh, you cut your leg off, we're going to give you a ticket that forbids you to walk. No, it's not a punishment. When you cut your leg off and you can't walk, it's just the physics of the thing. No one's shaming or punishing you. It's like you're doing it to yourself. You can't walk not because you're a bad person or because you're not spiritual enough, or because the heavens are punishing you. You can't walk because you don't have a leg, and you don't have a leg because you cut your own leg off. So when you cut off your inner Kuda, when you cut off your inner monkey, you lose the life force that they, that are flowing through them as well. That's what you don't do. So here, the old man does the exact opposite. He embraces the children, he embraces the monkey, and as a result, he gets this massive upgrade from this fountain. And the additional beauty of this fountain is not just like, oh, making it rain, let everyone go crazy. The fountain is like self-moderating. Right? There was this festival day, he sold out by the middle of the day. So he's like, well, why don't I go back and get another? Everyone wants more, I'll just get them more. And he goes back, and for the second barrel, the fountain is completely dry. And the beauty is, there's something about this old man who is in line with the flow of the mythopoetics of all of this. Right? He's not blind, he can see, he can understand and feel the physics of all of this. And he got the message immediately. He's like, oh, this is not punishment. This is not, the fountain's not disappearing. It's like I get one day, like give us our day, give us this day our daily bread. It's not give us this day bread for the rest of the year. It's like we'll go every day because we like to be close to the fountain. Even if we don't need sake, we like to be able to go into the forest without fear, right? And to sit at the side of the fountain without greed or desire, right? And that pleasure, being able to be in that sacred space within the deepest recesses of your inner unexplored self, that itself is pleasurable sake, right? That is fragrant. When you can go deep into yourself with no fear, threat, or control, it's just unbelievable. Okay. So instantly understood, there's a natural moderation. In the Kuda story, you ended up putting the children last, you put Kuda last, and you lost everything. You lost your future, and you lost your superpower in the form of Kuda. Okay, so Gary, if you're there, come on back up. These are all the notes I had for the story itself. And And I think Gary had some other comments and
Hi,
stories
Artie.
to share as well.
Yeah. So, and particularly because you were talking about monkey mind, and how it leads you into, more deeper insights, more refined insights. When you told me this is when I kind of remembered this dream I had years ago. And I also realized why I felt like this story felt like a dream, right? Because I mean, practically stories are dreams, right? That you read out loud in a waking state, but they're the dreams. But this particular one felt like a dream because I think I recognized the character of the monkey that I had seen in another dream that I had. And we always say this, right? When you have a series, when you have lots of dreams and you keep a journal and you keep track of your dreams, you keep going back to them. Eventually, when you get a new dream, you end up recognizing characters that you've seen before in a previous dream.
Yes.
You say, hey, wait a minute, like this monkey is the same monkey that I saw before.
Correct.
So that happens.
Yeah, and one, just to elaborate on this a little bit, what happens is that there is a counterpart on the other side of the veil, right? Not to get too fancy.
Yeah.
So there's your own inner self that basically speaks to you and sends you message through dream, right?
Yeah.
And after you get over the fact of who is this, it's just like it's coming to me. I can call it the muse, I can call it whatever. But the point is, the messages I get, the dreams I get, when I read them mythopoetically, they make sense, right? And the guidance that I derive, it's not like cheating me, leading me to like ruin my life. It's like the guidance is good. You can test it too, right? And you'll find that like 10 times out of 10, it's like the thing that the dream was guiding you to do was like, okay, I guess they're right again. And I still don't trust it, right? And what happens is over time, just like when you talk to anyone, right, a lot over time, you start to accrue a shared vocabulary, right? So for you, monkey means something, tiger means, et cetera. It's a tree house means something. For this series of mythopoetic live sacred space sessions, even from the Kuda story to the Sake story, right? Even in the space of 2 separate dreams, a month apart, effectively, there are emerging bits of vocabulary that are coming up, like the exile, like the fountain / pool of grief deep in the forest, that the exile has the power to lead you to, the importance of children, the importance of acting in good faith, et cetera, et cetera. So once this vocabulary develops, the further dreams later on will reference this existing vocabulary to be able to give even more nuanced, even deeper and more insightful guidance. Right. It's basically like, look, if I'm an 11-year-old, I have the vocabulary of an 11-year-old, right? I can talk about certain things, but then when my vocabulary expands, I can talk a little bit more about the finer points of justice, right? Or didactics versus aesthetic arrest, right? I mean, I need more refined vocabulary to talk about these more nuanced things. And so when you read your dreams over the course of months or even years, a very rich vocabulary ends up being accrued. And it's like this very rich interplay. It's not just sending Morse code or smoke signals back and forth. And these hints can come to you in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Right. Or you'll be driving around and you'll see, I mean, you're in India, so you'll see a monkey on the side of the road doing this very specific thing. Maybe reaching into a crack in the wall, and it's not harmed, but it's like, oh, that image, from the Sake story is coming back again. Is that like a little text message I'm getting from the dream saying like, pay attention to it, right? You don't have to do that. If you look all around you and you take nourishment from it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just my sidebar.
Yeah, and I think the quality of it is when it comes to you as a message, you kind of know that, you know, this particular image is a message and this particular image is maybe not, you know, you don't know, but you just feel it, right, when it comes to you.
Right.
So yeah, so that is how it was for me. What this, after you told me this, and you know, we were talking about monkey mind, I was like, I think I know why I feel like this is a dream, because I recognize the monkey. And so, you know, scrambled to find the notes of that dream that I had shared with you. It turns out this was in 2013 that I had this dream, and I
so 9 years ago.
Yeah, 9 years ago. It was, but it's such a powerful dream for me, is that I kind of remember the details and remember the way the dream went even now. And so,
well, the funny thing is, when you mention it, I remember the dream too, when you told it to me 9 years ago.
Yeah, it was like really elaborate, because until then, I didn't get many dreams in the first place. But okay, to set up context to this dream is that I didn't have too many dreams, and even those I had, I wouldn't remember when I woke up, and particularly, I didn't have these storylines kind of dreams, right? They were just simple flashes of things happening, very confusing, not very clear. But this was a time when I kind of started to meditate, you know, learning meditation techniques from you and discussing my experiences and what I was learning with you. And this was one of the study groups that you started. And you know, I was learning to give some sense and context to my meditation practice, because I had some background of doing meditation and yoga before, but I lacked context and the narrative of why is it I was doing and what did I want to do with it. And I was getting the clarity and the context from doing that now. And therefore I was finding it more fun and joyful to meditate. So I was doing more and more of it. And as I kept meditating more and more reflecting on what was going on during the meditation sessions and trying to understand the context of everything, I realized my dreams started getting more elaborate. And there were these really clear symbols coming out in dreams. And I didn't think much of it. I didn't connect the two things at the time. And I didn't think of it. I didn't know how to read dreams or even that they had any significance. I didn't bring it up with you when I was talking. I felt like I had to, but then I brushed it aside and said, it could be just meaningless. You know, memories, but getting jumbled.
We all do that.
Yeah. So one time when I did share this dream with you, and then what you told me just made so much sense at the time, right? So I was standing in the middle of a forest in this dream, right? And so I was in the middle of the forest, and there's a fort, and this forest and the fort are in real life as well. Like, I know the place. And the fort has been like closed off. It's an old ruined fort. It's closed off. You can't access the place. And I saw that, you know, while I was standing there, it kind of just about 30 feet away from me, there were these two young tigers. You know, they were siblings, male and female. They were just lying around, very relaxed. And again, I know the tigers from real life. I've seen them on safaris and so on. So I recognize the tigers. I recognize the female tiger, and I'm like very fond of this tiger. I've seen her many times, and I've seen her mother, and I've seen her grandmother many, many times. So it was like there's this kind of feeling of affection I felt when I saw them. And it was close to midday. It was hot, and the tigers were just lazing around. I was watching them. And as I stood there watching them, I felt a sensation. I became aware that I had a monkey clinging onto my back. And there was nothing unnatural about it. It's just, I felt it then. And it was just holding onto my back. And after a few minutes, while I was standing there, this female tiger, she got up and started walking towards me very slowly, very deliberately, and all the time just looking towards me, but not looking at me, right? It wasn't like she was aiming at me, but it was in my direction, and I started to get nervous.
And this is in your dream. This is in your dream.
This is in my dream, right?
Yeah.
This is the dream. I started to get nervous. I'm thinking, why is she walking towards me? And she's walking, she has this very stealthy, careful walk, like she's stalking the prey, right? So you start to get nervous just because of that. But another part of my mind says, don't worry, you know, she's not going to harm you. She knows you. It's all right. And she's not coming at you. It's all right. And I want to believe that, but her gait and her stance, the way she's looking kind of makes me really nervous.
Yeah.
And finally, when she's close enough, she picks up speed, right? Then she starts running. And that's when I just leave out all those assurances and no, this is serious. And I start running, and you know, you can't outrun a tiger who's already kind of started running at that time. She leaps out, and in just one jump, reaches out to me and takes the monkey off my back. And catches it by the throat and like by the neck, right? So she's just holding the monkey by the scruff of its neck, and she walks back and she walks away. And I'm just standing there stunned and shocked. I mean, the shock of having a tiger chase me is like real, right? But also shocked that it wasn't me she was coming after, that it was the monkey she wanted. And also that I couldn't see the monkey, right? I mean, should I have saved it? Should I have just thrown it onto a tree? Or should I have started running a bit sooner? I mean, what was this? Was this my fault? So all of those emotions was just so overwhelming. And then kind of, you know, I didn't know what to think of that dream, but it was just so vivid. It was so clear, right? And then do you want to share what you said when I shared that dream with you?
I mean, I can give the high level. I mean, basically, I think it was what we read: the monkey is a part of you, the tigress is a part of you, the fort is a part of you, and you're in the jungle. You're in the deep, unexplored part of your inner self. And this embodied inner feminine, divine feminine, you can call her your muse, which is powerful. You feel very warm toward it, and yet you know it can like come and like mess you up, right? Which is true of our bliss. Like, we love our bliss. I want to follow my bliss. And when you actually look at your bliss, you're like, if I start following my bliss, can like F up my entire life. My relationships, my job, everything can be imploded if I actually get into it with my bliss. And you start running. And you're like, it's gonna kill me. And you realize it doesn't, you feel this like whoosh across your back. And you look over and it's carrying the monkey off. And the monkey mind is your nervous mind saying like, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. You better like be a good girl. You better like not make trouble. You don't even think about your bliss. Forget about that. You know, get back into your cubicle and get back to work. Right. And I think something else was, you know, just like the Kuda dream, right? It's like, I was like, so did the tiger actually kill the monkey? And you're like, I don't know. I saw it in its mouth. I didn't see any blood. And I'm like, yeah, that's, I mean, you can do the interviews with the, you know, I don't know that we were doing the interviews back then, right? But
no, we weren't doing interviews. But what you asked me to kind of go back and remember if I saw the tiger actually killing the monkey. And I said, no, she took it back with her. And she was actually quite gentle in the sense that, you know, she held it almost like she would hold her cub. Not like she was holding like,
she's not ripping it apart. She's like taking it off, and you know, the two of them are probably off like giggling together somewhere, going like, oh yeah, we got her good. We got her good. But basically at a high level, it's like your divine feminine, you know, goddess of bliss, right? Lunging at you, not to hurt you, kill you, or self-sabotage you, but to basically get the monkey off your back.
Yeah.
So that you can actually like stand up straight in the forest. And the fort is like where your bliss is, where awakening is, all of that other stuff, right? It's like a temple. It's like a jungle temple.
Yeah.
And your bliss is like clearing, not even destroying worry and doubt, but just moving it aside so that you can like see the path ahead is kind of the feeling I remember.
Yeah, yeah. So that's pretty much kind of a short summary that you gave me line by line, and I said this is what it is.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to kind of come back to now, is that when I go back to this dream so many years ago, and this is pretty much the time when my outer life wasn't good, and that's an understatement, right? And this clinging monkey mind that was on my back, and the way the tigress just pulled it off, and the way I was terrified of that, right? I didn't get the context to it, but the coming few months were just so clear, as you know how it was, because the taking the monkey off my back in my real life terms was a complete upside down of everything I had going on right now. And it was a complete catastrophe at some levels, and yes, it wasn't pretty, and I was justified in being terrified of it, in a sense, right?
It's like
now,
the image is like you're in a prison and the prison is blowing up all around you. And it's a catastrophe, but also it's like, how else are you going to get out of the prison?
By the way, you mentioning that now, I had a dream exactly like that as well. I had a dream blew up and I was running out. So fast forward 9 years later, right? And I know that as I kept following my bliss in some sense, even after all the time in grief and healing and everything, the insights that I get on a day-to-day basis have vastly improved from what I used to get back then. Right?
So your sake is better.
The sake is better. The quality of those insights are better. And then this story comes in the form of a dream when I'm reading it. And the same monkey comes to me, in that story. And I see how with the tiger wound from that dream, it's transformed into a monkey that takes me into the forest and takes me to the spring.
Yes.
Right? So you had predicted this. You had said the monkey might come back to you late sometime. And when it comes back, it may have things to tell you.
Yes.
It's not like the monkey is dead and you don't have to worry, but the monkey might come back to you at a later time.
Yes.
And that seems to, you can tell that that's what's happening in that story. So it's a 9-year arc, but you can see all the dots connecting. So I think that was just a wonderful reveal of me.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
So you talk about the wounded monkey, being exiled, and then it comes back later, and then guides you to the fountain. It was just incredible how that happens. So with that, I also wanted to ask you about the crab, because the crab kind of wounds the monkey in the story, right? So what can you tell about that?
It's funny because the crab, like the tigress, is classically a symbol of the feminine. So crab is associated with the moon and cool moisture of the ocean floor, right? Sort of, it's like the coldest water, the wettest water is at the bottom of the ocean. And the crab is also a bottom dweller. It is the exile at the deepest level, right? It's like the well of the ocean, the sort of pool of grief and tears, or the pool of sake of the ocean. The crab is like right at the very bottom. Okay? And the other thing about crab is that it is the bottom dweller. It's like eating all the sort of carcasses and everything. Symbol of the deep sort of dark feminine, not the sort of happy, smile feminine, but the deep dark. But also it's rich. Crab meat is a delicacy. It's fatty, it's nourishing, it's delicious, and it is an aspect of the chthonic, right, the dark underworld feminine. So just like with the tiger and your monkey, this crab in the story is the thing that has captured the seemingly wounded monkey.
Yeah.
Right? In a way, this feminine crab is an even more subtle exile figure here. Right? It has captured your monkey mind intellect. I mean, there's another line you can go down here where you say the crab and the monkey are together. They're in cahoots. They're conspiring, and they're both exiled. And then it's like when you're running a scam. It's like, oh yeah, pretend you're like punching me, and we'll pretend fight to get this guy to come over so we can pick his pocket, right? So it's like the crab and monkey. It's like, okay, you put your paw in, I'll like snatch it, and you start squealing to get the guy coming over, right? And then he'll try to like beat me, and I won't let go, and then oh, he'll defeat me, and I'll let go, and then yeah, you lead him into the forest. Right? So and this is like the tiger and the monkey for you 9 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So at the first level, the monkey leads you to the fountain. The sake itself is clear, silvery, right? And therefore also associated with the moon and the chthonic feminine.
Yeah.
So you can say mythopoetically that the crab then transformed into the silver fountain after this healing transformation. Right? The crab transformed into the sake fountain. It is similar to the feminine tigress, which transformed itself into aspects of your bliss. And there's this like sneaking suspicion that they're all play actors trying to show you this message of the dream, but they're backstage together, like smoking cigarettes, joking, and they're like, "Oh wait, I'm on again. Okay, I have to go do my lines, right?" And another corollary of this is that this is just coming to me now to share, but like when you have dreams and the scary thing is, say, someone who actually like wounded you or abused you in past life, in your earlier life, right? Now that is a symbol of a part of your inner self. It's coming to you with this vocabulary. It's coming to you typically to scare the bejesus out of you because you've been ignoring your dreams, taking pills to like, not wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. Not unreasonable, right? But it's like, okay, we really need to get this message through. We're going to go to the back lot of the movie production studio of our dreams and make up a really scary movie so that you cannot ignore it. Because if you continue ignoring these, the next, last resort is to start giving you like physical symptoms, right? Like giving you ulcers and anxiety attacks. And I guess if we have to do that, we have to, but we live in your body too. We would prefer not to do that, right? So please just take our message. And the beautiful thing is that when you realize this is what's happening, you can say, oh, okay, you're trying to get me a message. Okay, so good, thank you. I will try to receive your message. But the dream last night was so triggering and almost re-traumatizing. So I get now why you did that. So to get my attention, well, congratulations, you have my attention now. And I cannot go back to that dream. It's too upsetting. Can you give me the message again, but turn the volume down and give it to me so if it's my inner masculine that I need to talk to and he's coming to me in this very abusive form, bring the same inner masculine, just bring it in a different symbol. You can use a little puppy dog. You can use my brother who was always good to me, whatever. I will talk to that inner masculine, not that one. And then the dream, the movie's production studio will be like, I mean, hell, we can do anything you want. We were contracted to get you this message. It's all we need is a read receipt and we're done. And we haven't gotten any read receipt from you for the past 30 years. So that's why we've been sending this dream every week for the past 30 years. And you're like, okay, my bad. Sorry. I got generally the message. And then on a dime, that recurring dream will stop.
Right.
and then you'll get all these other dreams as well. But it's like, it's almost this, you know, flooding of like bursting forward of excitement, because I'm like hitting SOS, SOS on the pipe over and over for 30 years. You finally get that it's a message, and you get that it's SOS, and you bang on the pipe above saying, okay, we hear you, hang tight, we're coming. And you're like, what? And you start banging wildly, you know, not just SOS, the simple message. It's like, yeah, there's 3 of us down here. One of us has a broken leg. We need water. We need light. Can you turn on the Wi-Fi because our phones still work? So we can like surf while we're like waiting for you to come get us. It's like this blistering like barrage of additional dreams. And it's lovely. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Like everyone's trying to talk at the same time, and you're like, finally, because you have questions about your life and your bliss, what it is. How do I prosecute my bliss? How do I get it done? And they have basically all the answers. So it's overwhelming. It can be terrifying, but also at this high level, when you realize what's going on, it's like, finally.
Yeah.
A huge relief.
I was reminded when you spoke about, you know, the volume being too high in a dream, and you asked it to come in another form. My mum used to do this when I was a child. So we would have, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but we have centipedes around here, right? So there's poisonous, and so there were times when they bite. Yeah, they bite. They're poisonous. So they come into the house sometimes through drain holes, or just especially in the summers.
Yeah.
And so when my mum would spot a centipede, you know, it's just so scary. So she would, and she considers that the goddess, right? So she would talk to it, and then she would say, she would tell the goddess, like, look, if you come in this form, there's no way I can engage with you. So can you just tone down and come to me in a form that I can talk to you?
Brilliant.
And this was just so funny, because the next day you would have a stray cow walking on the street and then take like a right turn into our house asking for a treat. Like would give her a jaggery ball or something, you know, for her to munch on, and she would just stand there waiting for it. So, and then my mom would actually talk to the cow, and she'd say,
of course.
Thank you. Now I can talk to you. Like, please don't come like a centipede.
I love that. I love that.
So yeah, I think it's the same mechanism with the dreams.
It always stuns me, because it's like this magical world that we're talking about is all around us all the time. And all you need are the eyes to see. And it's not like, oh, I have superpowers now. It's like, no, you can talk to them. They've been talking to you the whole time, chattering away. And like you said, even things in the outer real concrete world can also be read mythopoetically. You can read fairy tale, you can read dream, you can read like the conversation you had with your brother-in-law, you know, like all mythopoetically, if you want. You don't have to, only if you want. But, you know, life is but a dream. So you can read everything mythopoetically as well, and gain insight from it.
Yeah. Thank you. So what reflections will we do this for this session?
The exercise. Okay, the exercise. So let's do the exercise. Okay, so again, no pressure or expectation of participation. There will be no quiz. It's only if you want. And the way we do these exercises, it's just a prompt, a question to ask. So this week, if you would like to do it, you don't have to do it. Just take some quiet time alone. If there's no quiet time in your house, when you drive to get groceries and you park the car, sit in your car for 10 minutes before you go in, no one will miss you, right? It's fine. Get some pen and paper and ask yourself these questions that I will suggest, and then write out your answers, and then see what insights come. So last week's exercise was, I think, last month's exercise with the Kuda story, right? The question was, you know, what is your exile? Who is your Kuda, right? And this session's exercise is a different question. And the question for this session with the sake seller is, what is your own fountain of sake? Okay. what is the thing within you that you have been led to, if you have been led to, that is basically your superpower, right? And given how you know you've been led to it, it is a superpower that you know is not yours. It is a superpower that has been gifted to you. Okay. So, so I'll give you an example from my own life, right? So you could say, in a manner of speaking, that one of my sort of fountains of sake, right, is this kind of mythopoetic leaning, this tendency to sort of see things with mythopoetic vision, where I'm able to see things from this lens of symbolism. And, when I let this vision and sake flow through me, it helps me with insight, it helps other people, hopefully helps you too. If not, at least hopefully it's entertaining for you. Right? But it is a kind of superpower when it really gets going. But the point is, this mythopoetic vision that I have is not me. It is not me. It flows through me, right? And the outer world is like, oh, Artie, you're so good at that. And I'm like, I don't bother correcting people, right? Because it's just like pleasant, common conversation. But the mythopoetic power is not what I'm good at, because that's not me. It's just flowing through me. What I am, quote unquote, good at is actually setting up my life in a way, or trying to set up my life in a way that allows me to hold a lot of sacred space, protective space for this fountain within me that is not me, but which I then, de facto am a steward of. Okay. So in a sense, I am a gardener, right? And my job is to, keep a protective boundary and sort of nurture this fountain in the garden, right? The fountain is not me. The fountain is not mine. The garden is not mine. But I just work here. I'm the steward. I make sure everything's set up so that people can access the fountain. Okay. And then when this stuff comes through me and I do dream readings and I do healing work with people, people are like, wow, that's really amazing. That really sort of helped me and changed my life and all. And I'm like, well, that's really nice, but it's not actually me. And because I see that from this perspective, when people are impressed with the work I do, I'm not like bow down before me because I'm awesome. I'm like, yeah. So that's my sake that you just tasted. It's good stuff, right? It's really good. And then now, so what's your sake? Can I try some of your sake? Right? Because we're all equal. We're all humans. We all have a fountain within us. So after you're excited and you taste the sake from my fountain, I'm also nerdily excited to taste the sake from your fountain. And then we all get super nerdy excited doing tasting flights of all this stuff, right? And that's just joyous thing. That's one of the reasons I've ended up, as my work, helping people find bliss. Not because I'm so advanced or whatever, because the more people find their bliss, the more sake I get to taste, right? When I hear stories about people finding their bliss, it's like this explode. It's like watching a rocket launch into space, right? And just like just all this goodness, flowers raining down as blessings on the life of the world around us. And if you're sitting there going like, well, woe is me, I don't have a fountain, I never found my fountain, maybe I don't even have a fountain, my jungle is just empty, right? Well, first of all, you don't know that. And I'm just like, okay, well, in my humble opinion, you do have a fountain. Everyone has a fountain. But the only way to get to your fountain is to have your exile guide you to it. And you can't hold the exile at gunpoint to say guide me to the fountain, right? They'll guide you to like the lake of poison, right? And so you're like, I don't have a fountain. I don't know what my fountain is. Then I would go to the question from last month's session. And the question from last month's session is, who is your exile? And how are things going between you and your exile? And there are all kinds of good things that happen when you get close to your exile. But ideally, that's not why you do it, right? Like if my 4-year-old child is like 3 aisles away in the supermarket crying and I hear her crying, right? I rush over and go get her, not because she's going to get into Harvard someday and bring me all this prestige. I go get her without condition. I go get her because she's my child, right? So hopefully you'll get to the point where you like are open to engaging with your exile, but not because the exile will bring you to your fountain. Hopefully you will engage with your exile because your exile is a part of you as much as your like your heart, liver, and lungs are part of you, right? I don't love my lungs only if they're good lungs. If anything, if they're, you know, wounded lungs, I give them even more attention because they matter, right? Okay. So anyway, that's the exercise, and give that a try only if you want. Okay. All right, so that is it for this session. Thank you so much, and I'll go ahead now and close our sacred space for the session. Our next session is next month, and the only update there is I'll just give you the link here so you can sign up. It's free, open to the public. Please join us. No pressure. You can invite your friends, but no pressure. Okay. And the only note about that, if you joined previously, I moved the date of the session to about a week earlier. So the next month's session is on April 10th. And the reason for that is I will be in Europe around the second half of April. I think I'm going to be in Basel, Paris, and Athens for this trip. So if you're in Europe and you would like to do a small get together just to hang out for dinner or whatever, let me know, send me an email. Doing it in Paris is probably going to be the easiest. And of course, COVID pandemic permitting, I'll go on this trip, and then COVID pandemic permitting, I may plan to go back again in the summer. So if I miss you this time, we'll try again over the summer. Okay. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the session. I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me and with us. And thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, and the spiritual nourishment of this shared sacred space with me and with us. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and free of the undue control of others. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Have a great week and month, and I will see you all in the next session. Thank you. Thank you.